Hello and welcome to World Insight on CCTV News. Today we present to you Living Civilization, an episode in our special series Rising Voices, where we explore new voices and solutions to tackle modern-day challenges. Today on Living Civilizations, we speak with some of the descendants of the world's most treasured ancient civilizations and hear their views on how to protect them. This special program today was inspired by a global forum on ancient civilization protection held earlier in the Forbidden City in Beijing. It was a great honor to obtain the exclusive rights to film in the Forbidden City, one of the most precious royal palaces of the world. And against the backdrop of such a grand palace, broaching the topic of cultural heritage was not an easy one. We start with our conversation with Iraqi Minister of Culture, Tourism and Antiquities. Iraq has been besieged by war over the years, and the country, which has home to an ancient civilization dating back to thousands of years, is now struggling to save it.
A civilization in ruins. Hatra, Iraq, once a UNESCO heritage site from the time of Alexander the Great, is now reduced to dust and rubble at the hands of ISIL. Mosul, Iraq, a city where priceless historical objects came under the hammer in similar attacks.
It's a part of everyone's history. It's a part of the people who are destroying these objects. It's a part of their history.
Syria's culture and heritage are also in the claws of ISIL, ground into dust by violence and destruction. Calls for the United Nations to do more are increasing.
They are persecuting and uprooting them from their homes and erasing all traces of their history.
The relics and treasure that a terror group does not destroy in Syria and Iraq are sold for a hefty profit. It is believed some precious items have already traveled to elsewhere through internet deals and black market trade. Without an expert eye, the goods often pass right through security checks.
Your average customs official will know if he sees a kilo of cocaine that it's automatically illegal. But if they're seeing an ancient pot, they don't know in some cases whether it's just a tourist trinket or if it's a 3,000-year-old urn.
As these historical artifacts pass through borders and ownership illegally, one can only imagine the further loss these countries feel. Syria and Iraq, once home to the most ancient and grandest civilizations, are now turning into a land of nothingness as they recover from their scars of war.
From a country experiencing war on a daily basis, Minister Ramzi told me that he tries to enjoy every minute of peace when he can, and also find every kind of bondage he could find in order to better protect the cultural heritage of his country back at home. And this time, he's found it here in the 2016 World Ancient Cultural Heritage Protection Forum, being held at the Forbidden City here in Beijing. Mr. Minister, you have a whole battle going on inside Iraq, the city of Mosul, for example, to retake it back from the terrorist ISIL. But the thing is, when you have the planes, when you have the ground forces, very much likely cultural heritage also being destroyed. What do you make of this? Is this necessary collateral damage or not?
We in a cabinet sent a very good message to the military, Iraqi military, Peshmerga, and even paramilitaries. And we said that the archaeological sites, heritage sites, should be safeguarded by Iraqi army, but we can't control the Daesh, of course. This is something different. But I think now the battleground is a little bit far away from the heritage area, but I don't know whether Daesh will use these areas and these ancient cities as a shield for them or not, because there is some ideas that they are going to hide themselves there because they knew that the Iraqi army will not destroy this area, whether they use as a shield for themselves. But I hope that the battle around Nineveh will end up rapidly as soon as possible because Nineveh is the second largest city in Iraq, within 3 million population, and is the heartland Mesopotamia civilization. Therefore, I think it is very important to take into account that this area, and especially the archaeological area, should be protected by Iraqi army.
Mr. Minister, you're in charge of this specific issue, cultural heritage protection. I just wonder, when the battles are going on every day, what is it like for you?
No one likes to hear the news about fighting. You know, we are human beings. We like to live in harmony together and in peace.
But particularly, you're the Minister of Cultural Protection. You know, in wars, things are going to be destroyed.
Yeah, of course, because since 2003, almost 15,000 pieces in Iraq been stolen and destroyed. Only we get back almost 4,000 of these pieces has been stolen and illicitly trafficked to the European and other countries. So it is not easy when it is a matter of looting, trafficking these archaeological pieces, and it gain money not only for ISIS, but even for those people are trading with these pieces.
What is it like for you daily?
No, actually, I get used to hear this kind of news every day, and this is not new for Iraq, because we living under such kind of circumstance since 1980, when the fighting were going on between Iraq and Iran, and after then the occupation of Kuwait, the nationalists attacked Iraq, and after the collapse of Saddam Hussein, we've been fighting Al-Qaeda, then we fight ISIS. And therefore, it is not new news for us, but of course, no one in Iraq like to have such kind of life. For example, me, I'm from Kurdistan of Iraq and from Sulaymaniyah. I drive my car by myself in Sulaymaniyah without, but in Baghdad I have, when I go to my office, I have more than 20 bodyguards with me, with a convoy of the armored car. This is not alive if you compare it with a regular and basic line of life.
But Mr. Minister, what can you do at this moment?
Without helping from a national community, it is very hard for Iraq to defeat Daesh, ISIS, because ISIS is not related to Iraq as a country, but is related to the Middle East and the international community and the whole world. You see in Europe what is going on, and even in Northern Africa, and in Syria, in other places. Therefore, we should all together work very hard to defeat Daesh. As I said, not defeating them only on the battleground, but defeating them ideologically through doing a lot of jobs in these societies, especially in Iraq, in Syria, Northern Africa, and even in Saudi Arabia, because the Daesh is a very dangerous phenomenon. It's not differ between who are you? Are you from Iraq, or are you from France, or are you from Poland? The issue is Daesh, in his mind, there is something, is the ideologically, they go back to 1,500 years ago, and they want to adopt this kind of ideology now. They don't know what is going on, or at least they want to refuse every development that's happening rapidly today in the world.
Thousands of years ago, important developments were taking place in Mesopotamia, now known as Iraq. On the floodplains of the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, Fertile soil brought down from the mountains by the rivers gave rise to a much denser population.
1 square mile is city, 1 square mile is orchards, 1 square mile is clay pits, as well as the open ground of Ishtar's temple. 3 square miles and the open ground comprise Uruk.
Here, one of the early 4 ancient civilizations was born, the ancient Babylons. Under an organized government, this was where mankind first began to read, write, create laws, and live in cities. They were also the first to use the wheel, and the invention of the wagon was a transportation revolution for farming and trade. And during this time, architectural structures such as the dome, column, and arc were created. The rich and remarkable historical, cultural, and artistic legacy of ancient Iraq have since fascinated and inspired humanity for centuries.
And therefore, Mr. Minister, to let your people and the rest of the world know about your civilization, your part of the culture is extremely important, so that they know they are not coming from ISOs, but rather from some very respectful culture. So how are you doing that part of the job at this moment when the wars are still going on?
Yesterday, I had a good meeting with the Minister of Culture of China, and we should cooperate together to show that despite what is going on in Iraq, despite the destruction of archaeological sites, civilization sites, but we're still alive, and still this civilization is the identity of the human being, humanity across the history, and is a common ground which bring together all the nations to understand that the civilization in Middle East and even in Iraq is not owned by Iraqi people, but is a civilization for everyone.
Mr. Minister, one of the problems when you have war going on to protect the cultural heritage is the looting. The looting is not only because of the people who looted, but also because of the people who buy from the looters. And those people are not just inside your country, they're also from all over the world. What can you do about this?
Actually, we can do little, because the sullen actions across the world, and especially in Europe and United States of America, they don't care why this piece is from Iraq or not, is looted by Daesh or not. And this is the problem. Therefore, we asking every time in conferences, meeting, workshops, that the convention should be changed, the law should be changed, because they know certainly that this piece is from Iraq, but because it is not recorded in Iraq, or because it is not given a certain number for it in our museum or wherever, therefore they think that this is not belong to Iraq. I think it is very important that salons and even international communities and the states across the world realize that these pieces should go back to the origin countries. Otherwise, the looting, illegal trafficking, and illegal auctions in the salons are going on without taking any action.
Which part of the international convention, which part of the international law do you think, Mr. Minister, according to you, should be changed for that?
I think Europe and United States of America first.
Let me go to another question, also important for your country. You are such a country with rich cultures and very different kinds of ethnic groups. For example, yourself, Kurdish. There are other officials who are coming from other ethnic groups. The question is, what kind of culture to be protected? As a minister, are you going to protect Kurdish culture mainly? How is the balance going to be kept?
No, I think the civilization in Mesopotamia is not related to Arab or to Kurd or to Turkmen or to other ethnic group. It is related to the whole people in the country. Tangible and non-tangible heritage should be protected by Iraqi people, by Iraqi government, whatever these tangible and tangible related to Kurd or to Arab or to Turkmen, because all together they shared to build such kind of civilization. And this is the important thing. And I think that we in Iraq, we don't differ between this civilization or southern of Iraq or in other areas.
Mr. Minister, I know you have a lot of work to do, but all the best to you and your colleague. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Fayez Renzi, the culture minister of Iraq, talking to me earlier about the challenges protecting cultural heritage in his country, a country torn by war. But the challenges that we're facing today to protect our cultural heritage is not just the war or conflicts. It's also about over-commercialization and exploration of the cultural heritages that we have worldwide. On that point, two culture scholars that I talked to, both from India and Mexico, have put it the best when I talked to them on the sidelines of this forum. Rima from India, Olga from Mexico, welcome to CCTV News World Insight.
Thank you very much.
What are some of the challenges facing you and your country when doing protection of ancient civilizations?
Well, in India, there are lots of sites which are already known. You know, people will talk about the Taj Mahal. People will talk about sites they know. And the government is protecting thousands of sites. But like with China, no matter how much you have protected, like with Mexico, there are so many small sites which still need protection, which are unknown, and which are then left to the local people to preserve. So the challenge there is to make sure that local communities understand how important the past is, not just for the present, but for the future.
Is it difficult to do?
It is difficult. The local people are willing to do it, but money matters. So if today, to have a high-rise building means something more, they will not care about that little shrine which is on somebody's, that little memorial of somebody who fought maybe 2,000 years ago. Somebody fought and died. And they'll say, huh. But the old men don't. Old women and old men recognize it. But the young ones say the past is the past. We need to live in the future. I think they need to realize the future, the present, and the past are all linked.
And what about you, Olga? Mexico.
In Mexico, we have more than 60 languages, for instance, and groups of indigenous people all over the country, but especially in the southeast of Mexico. And these people are starting sometimes to not want to speak their own languages. And we talk about an ancient poem in the Nahuatl language that is from Mexico, center of Mexico, that says something like that. When a language dies, you do not have the manner to talk about a bird or the beauty of the sunset or the tree, because you don't have the ways to do it.
But are they going to be persuaded? How can you persuade them? Is it easy to persuade them?
No, it is not, but they're wanting to do it. You know, we have a school in Gulf of Mexico, in close to a place in an archaeological site. This school is exactly that. It has all the traditions. The school teaches languages, teaches crafts, teaches ways of being, of taking care of their elders. And this is what we have to develop in our country.
But then, will one school, Rima, really save one civilization?
Olga, I have a story here, a way I would like to share with you. And this story is from at least 1,000 years ago. And I think, again, it will appeal to people who are listening to me in China or in Mexico or in India. A king from he wasn't a king, a warrior of very humble origin. There was an attack, he became the commander, he became the king. Having become a king, he married into a very royal family and he took all the behavior of a royal. So he did not like the local language he had grown up with. And he forbade someone from speaking it. He said, speak in Sanskrit. So it's like speaking, perfect Mandarin, not the local languages. His old court poet then went away because he composed in the old language. Now, with time, maybe 10 years, 20 years later, this king went out hunting. He got separated from the others and he came to a forest where there was absolute peace. And he heard this beautiful sound and he followed it. And he found that birds were sitting on the trees and there was a tiger and an elephant and a leopard and all were sitting next to each other. And an old man with a long white beard was reciting beautiful poetry in the local language. And as he recited, he was burning each leaf. Those long leaves of the old days. And he said, stop, who are you? Why are you burning this? This is beautiful. And the old man looks at him and he says, "O king, do you not recognize me? You forbade me to use that language." So the king realized his mistake, that yes, you need the perfect language, but you need the local language. You need the imperfect and the perfect to have a harmonious world. Now, this is written about. So if this realization can happen to a king, I think it can happen to communities if we choose to work with them. If we can make them proud of an international culture that they belong to, but also of the local culture which comes from their heart.
But people will argue, Rima, Olga, both of you are coming from well-off families, you're well-educated, you're the elite of the society. Of course you want the culture to be what it is, but for those who are living in the huts, which might be there for about 500 years or even 1,000 years, they want to live in modernity. What do you make of this kind of argument?
When I was in the National Museum of India, that is a choice we had to have, because the rules were such that if there was a monument like this one, the Imperial Palace, the Forbidden City, people who were illegally there, who didn't have papers to be there, but they've been there 50 years, 100 years, they're not supposed to be there according to the government and according to law, but they are there. Because they are there, the tourists can have restrooms, they cannot because they are meant to be moved out. And so we were arguing for them to have those things. It also helps in our countries to be able to say, hey, listen, I am what I am thanks to my parents having gone in for education, because that's where I come from. I come from where you were. So my father grew up reading in the light of a lantern, and he became what he is, and he was conscious of his culture. So it needs talking, it needs negotiation. It also needs, which is why it is very relevant for the younger people to not only look to certain international countries as, that is where we want to go because they have a better standard of life. Because you may not have it there. You need to work as hard. So if you have pride of where you are, and pride I don't mean, just to say, oh, we are the oldest, we are the best. That doesn't mean anything. But I am what I am. If I'm poor and I have torn shoes, but I'm wearing something that my grandmother made, I'm proud of it.
Compared to India, Olga, you're from Mexico, I'm sure there are more diversities in terms of protecting civilizations, even more challenging, I would assume.
Yes, but you can communicate. You can communicate if you relate to them in their own way of being, in their own heart, not from a high position, not from the desk that you decide on public policy. The housing industry in Mexico has wanted to make home concrete and brick to the people there, and they have had to see how horrible it is to have concrete homes because it's very hot or very cold in the winter, and the knowledge of the ancient people that have built their homes in different ways, in mud, in very thick walls and very high ceilings, things like that are becoming again something that is necessary to maintain.
But the question is, how much do we know? How much can we learn ancient civilizations?
There is no question we can learn a lot.
Are we smart enough to learn?
Maybe the people are, but also at government levels across the world, you know, internationally, all governments, regional governments, state governments, national governments, need to know that policy making is not enough. You know, the policy maker, I know they may be in touch with the locals, but you need to be in constant dialogue with people. Because if you want to remove my little one-room hut and give me a huge palace somewhere, I might have an emotional connect. Or I might just say, yes, I will go for the high rise. But then, you know, what happens to the old grandmother who can wander down to the local market on days when her knees are good? We forget that. What happens to the old great-grandfather who can hardly see? But if he goes down the little street he lives in, he's lived there, you know, maybe all his life, there's a connect, which may not be in the high rise, which may not be in the modern materials, which may not be in a lot of things. How do we choose? Who chooses? Who is the best person? And how informed should you be? Should it just be the majority decides? Right. You know, that's democratic, so will a majority decide? Will a noble leader decide? How much, because in the past you had good rulers who listened, and you had good rulers who were totally autocratic and did not listen, and you had bad rulers who did the same. So how can we, at a small level and at the international level, listen to our past, listen to the people around us, listen to each other, and then come to informed decisions.
But have you got some answers?
No, I don't think, do you?
Well, I don't.
I wish we did.
I wish we did.
But I think we can seek for them. I mean, just not as a joke, but seriously, we need to think. We need to think consciously in whatever field of life we are in.
But what about that ultimate question? I mean, results vis-a-vis efficiency. What about short term? What about long term? You know, when policies are being drawn, all of these issues need to be taken into consideration.
Well, many times the trade-off is tourism, for instance. We want money from the tourists and we want them to come and see these ancient civilizations, and we do not have a management plan for visiting the tourism. We let everyone come in and destroy what we wanted to show off. I think the politicians need to know how to show these ancient civilizations, but without destroying the hen of the golden eggs, without showing, letting everybody come in and everybody sell things and everybody go and ask for money, and destroy this beauty of, in the sense of community.
Have you seen some heart-aching examples?
Yes, Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula, and it is a horrible market. It's impossible to visit. It's filled with people selling. You cannot. They are using the Chichen Itza for concerts.
But some would say, isn't that nice? I mean, more people got to know this specific cultural heritage site as a result.
No, because what you do is make it become commercial, make it become, the people will go into the Chichen Itza space that is a sacred space, and it's still sacred for many Mayan. It becomes a place to have fun, to hear music, yes, very nice music, but it's you can have these players have concerts somewhere else and raise awareness, yes, but somewhere else, not in this sacred, very special space.
I want to come back to that word you used, you know, about time, because we look at something and we say, and I've heard this recently in India, that instead of preparing mortar, which takes 20 years. They say, we don't have the time for it. And I said to myself, I said, wait a minute. And I said to them, you know, people lived maybe shorter lives than we did in the past. If they had the time, why do we suddenly feel that we have to do everything in a hurry? Why does change have to come in a hurry? Why do we need to look at short-term benefits for everything? Why can we not realize that the ancient civilizations have survived because they gave the benefit of knowledge to each other? They realize that it takes time to do things, that short-term fixes will just be short-term fixes. So you have, you know, sudden tourists coming in. In the long term, it will not keep the culture or civilization going. And you can say, well, so what's wrong with that? Let's destroy it. But when you don't have roots, your tree is not going to grow strong. And it may not matter in one generation, but it does matter. Again, what keeps coming back to our countries, you know, to China, to Mexico, to India, is, yes, you know, this building is interesting, this monument is interesting, but we need to have money to make it go. So use it for something else. Why should an old building, which has already lasted its time, need to justify itself in the future? It's like, you know, asking a great-grandmother who has worked hard, she's carried people on her shoulders, now just wants to sit in the sun, and you say, no, no, what money is she bringing in? Well, I think something in that thinking needs to be concentrated to look for solutions and not just look at simplistic solutions.
Well, maybe both of you don't care about the speed, but so many people around you, they do. They talk about speed, they talk about everything needs to happen fast, overnight, they talk about money. They value what is the latest rather than the ancient and the past. What can you do?
Yes, definitely. I think that what we have to do is be more humble and understand that the knowledge these people can give us is much more than what we can give them. And therefore, we have to really understand and learn how to listen. And maybe for the young, we have to teach them to listen. They want to listen. They have too many things to care about and to think about. Teach how to listen, how to understand, how to be more empathic with them, with these societies, that the only thing they need is someone to hear, to understand them.
What can we do? It's the we. It's forums like this where you realize that, you know, Mexico has certain issues, they're dealing with it. China has certain issues, they're dealing with it. Iran, Iraq, all the countries present here have issues and problems, and together we can do. Individually, maybe you would need to be, you know, somebody really special to be able to call the shots to do it. Maybe people in the media can make a difference. So we need to just, I think, get together perhaps and convey this urgency for this, but the importance of it. If civilizations have lasted for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, they will not, unless we give them that importance and unless we do our bit.
Well, ladies, when you travel around the world, what kind of common grounds, I mean, India, Mexico, China, some of the other ancient civilizations, do you find among them when you are walking inside the Forbidden City and many of the cultural heritage sites inside your own countries? What inspirations do they provide to you?
Yes, very much, very much. For instance, these past day and a half that we have been here, learning about what Dr. Shan is doing in the Palace Museum, this very ancient place as the Forbidden City, is something that makes us understand that there is modernity can be taken into our own countries in a different way.
Arima?
I think I'm always amazed at how much the human mind and the human hands have been able to create, you know, physical, poetry, art, music, We've also been able to destroy. So let's hope we don't do that. But I also realize the other thing, life for us as human beings is short, and what has survived is the culture and the civilization, which means the collective. So it is not the I. You know, I often wonder why in India they used to talk about the soul coming back many times. I think it's because the idea was you can't learn enough in the short time you're on earth. Now, I don't know if I believe in reincarnation, but definitely I'm amazed at how much we have created, and I'm amazed at how much we have destroyed. And I wish we could carry on with the creative part and maintaining what is there across the world and stop destroying, because I don't think we can create those things anymore.
What a pleasure, ladies, to have both of you on our program. All the best. That's Rima from India and Olga from Mexico talking to me about their views as two cultural scholars of ancient civilizations. Their views are pretty much shared by the director of the Palace Museum, Mr. Shan Zixiang, during an exclusive interview with me. He is well known for not only a strong advocate of the Forbidden City, but also taking advantage of new technologies and social trends to promote this Palace Museum. He believes in the dignity and life of ancient artifacts, and also believes firmly in the strength of ancient civilizations for centuries and thousands of years to come. There are several countries, as you said, Director Shan, that has been in challenge. For example, Greece, they have economic challenges, or Iraq, in war. There are other countries with ancient civilization that are experiencing similar challenges. The thing is, what can we do now together?
确实像您所说的，我们的一些文明古国
Like you said, ancient civilizations are facing challenges in the protection of historic and cultural relics. Some relics have been damaged, stolen, ravaged, or smuggled. People should respect the dignity of these relics, and countries too should show more respect to the history and culture of other countries. Relics contribute to the prosperity of human civilization. So we are calling for more people to be aware of relic protection through, for example, our forum today, and to stop wars, theft, and the ravage of historical relics. That way the relics can enjoy the dignity they deserve in modern society.
Director Shan, but there's an ultimate question, that is, how much do we know, really, about our own civilization, our own culture? What do we know for us to establish this standard and a way to protect our own culture? That, I think, is the most difficult question.
This is the responsibility of all museums and other cultural institutions, to reveal the cultural significance behind our collections. Let's take, for example, our jade curation, the pride of the Forbidden City Museum. There are 32,000 pieces of jade in our museum, all linking back to 5,000 years of Chinese civilization. We unearthed jade objects representing ancient Hongshan culture, which originated in northeast China 5 millennia ago. Also, many pieces from southeastern China's Langchu culture, which also date back to the same period. But how do we tell the different stories of Chinese culture? That poses a great challenge for us. We have to carefully think about how to exhibit these pieces in order to enlighten the public both about our history and about our future.
Director Shan, a lot of people have been really wondering, what about the quality of contemporary Chinese culture? How does that compare to the ancient one that we used to have? How much can we really learn from the old examples to benefit us today? What is your thought?
当然，我不同意一种说法，就是今人不如古人。
I don't agree with the idea that our ancestors were any better than us. We've witnessed great developments brought by modern technology. The problem is that the world is filled with too much information. These collections are able to tell us about the spirit of craftsmanship, carpenters or stone sculptors who have achieved capability by devoting one's entire life to it. We can inherit this spirit from ancient culture and make our own contribution to society. You mentioned the drainage system in the Forbidden City. It was designed and constructed during the Ming Dynasty, and no doubt it has lasted long and served us well. But without careful maintenance over the past 500 years, it would have been destroyed. It's thanks to generations of effort, especially since the establishment of the museum 90 years ago, that the drainage system was well maintained and protected. The system we see today is an integration of the wisdom of our ancestors and contributions of modern society.
所以这是古人的智慧和今天人们的耐心叠加起来的今天的文化景观。
That is Shan Jixiang, the director of the Palace Museum in Beijing. He told me there is a place in the Palace Museum that he really enjoys. That is called the Broken Rainbow Bridge. It is a single-arch ancient stone bridge located outside of the Gate of Supreme Harmony. Right around the bridge, there are 18 ancient pagoda trees. He said that is a place of peace and tranquility when the crowds of tourists are gone for the day and a place where he can think. He said it's very important that we put a lot of thought into what we can learn from our ancient civilizations and also how we can better protect them. And that's all for today. Stay tuned to World Insight next week for yet another episode of Rising Voices, where we cover the upcoming U.S. presidential election. We speak to a future generation of young leaders, young scholars from all over the world now in Beijing, find out their insights on the election and the qualities they consider important for the world's future leadership. And of course, if you'd like to see more of our program, simply visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching and tune in again next week for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night and have a great weekend.